You're listening to Self-Dev Radio. I'm Carl, and now we're talking live to the author of Take Charge of Your Life. We're going to chat about reinventing yourself and how to take control of what happens around you. We're talking to Jo Condrill. Hello, Jo.
Hi, Carl. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. It's a little wet here in the UK, but life's treating me well.
Great.
Was that a decent introduction?
Yes, that was okay.
Okay. So tell me about Take Charge of Your Life. This is your book.
Take Charge of Your Life. The subtitle is Dare to Pursue Your Dreams, because I believe that most of us lead lives of quiet desperation, as some famous author once said, and there's so much more we can do with our lives, and I believe that I'm a person who can show you how to do that. I've done it, and I've helped other people how to do it. I teach seminars from Los Angeles to New York City, and people are enthusiastic about it and know that there's more to life that they can have if they just set their minds to it. And you can too.
Oh, good. So, well, I've got my pen ready. I'm going to take some notes. But
okay.
So what's it all about? What's the concept behind it?
Well, it's basically a 6-step method where you can begin from where you are and go to any place you want to be. The very first thing that I ask people to do is to take a look at what's happened so far, because we need to deal with some of those things that we're carrying forward, whether it's bad or good feelings. A lot of us carry resentments for years, and we need to have a look at that, write it down, and see if that's going to really serve us well to get where we want to go in life. And most people find that, no, they can let go of those things that they're still pouting about or brooding about and get on with the rest of their lives, which is a very healthy step. At the same time, I ask them to look at some of the good things that have happened in the past that they could build on and take forward. The next thing is basically to figure out what you want. You know, most of us don't know what we want. Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich calls it having a burning desire, and if you have a burning desire, you can have anything you want. But most of us flit from one thing or another. We'll try something. If it doesn't work out, we give it up and go do something else. Maybe they've tried to write a book. Maybe, we've thought, oh, gosh, I'm going to write a bestseller, and then we see how much work it is, and we say, no, that's not what we want to do. We'll go do something else. So the first thing is to do some blue sky thinking, to actually dream, to take some time to sit back, kick back, and think, if anything were possible, what would my life look like 10 years from now? If I could do anything, if I could be anything, if I could have anything I want to, what would I be, have, and do 10 years from now? Maybe older people want to think closer, maybe 5 years from now, what's it going to look like? But then, we can always look 20 years into the future. What's it going to look like? What's it going to look like if we keep doing what we're doing now and we don't change anything? You can't expect anything different if you're going to keep doing the same old thing. And so we need to embrace the fact that there'll be some changes. Okay, what kind of changes? Who's going to make the changes? Are they going to be imposed on us? Or are we going to take control and decide what those changes need to be? And I just think we often, in the hubbub and the rush of every day, we forget to think. We forget to think creatively and imaginatively about our own futures. And so we're not charting any future. We're just living day to day, putting out fires, hoping that we get the raise or that somebody will smile on us and marry us and we'll live happily ever after or something like that. We don't actually try to make things happen. Once you and I wanted to mention, too, that, Martin Luther King Jr. talked about having a dream in his famous speech on the Mall in Washington, D.C. I have a dream, he said, and he was projecting the future. Here's what the future can be. And then you set about making it happen. One thing after you have that dream, and you really sit down and write down what it is you want your life to be like in all the facets of your life, not just your job or your physical health or your wealth, your spirituality, but your whole combined being, because we're made up of many facets, you know. And while we focus on one at a particular time, we still have all of these parts of our being. So we do need to focus on different areas at different times, and we need to accept the fact that sometimes if we're working toward a specific goal, we may be out of balance for a little while, but that's okay because we come back into balance and we know what we're doing because we're just moving ahead in a particular direction.
So your book gives guidelines on taking that charge, on doing that mapping.
Yes, it does. And it has a section for each one of the important pieces of it. And I talk about, you know, what's happened to me. You know, I was, when I became single again, I was at the poverty level. I even spent some time in a women's shelter for battered women.
Wow.
And I end up being a supervisor, a civilian woman in the Pentagon, and owning my own business, doing seminars all over the place. I've got a number of honors in various areas. So I know that once you decide to do something and put your mind to it, it can happen. You can make it happen. I've helped other people do it, and they have come back to me and said, wow, we never could have done that if we hadn't have listened to you, because we didn't think it was possible. I know it can happen, like I say, and I lay the steps out in the book, and I tell stories about my time in the Pentagon and how that worked and the various things that I did and my work with Toastmasters. Excuse me. You know, Toastmasters International is a nonprofit volunteer organization, and I led a group to rank number 1 in the world, and they didn't think they could do it. But it's the only time it's ever been done in the Washington, D.C. area. Wow. And they started saying, Jo, you're the only person that could do that. And I said, well, no, I'm not. But, you know, I'm maybe the only one who knows how to take the steps to do it. And that's when I began to present seminars that laid out the plan for how things like that could happen. Because I was using the steps that I had used in my personal life, as well as in leading these 3,000 people. So I know it works. And Scott DeGarmo, who was the publisher and editor-in-chief of Success Magazine, says, Jo is talking about sound principles, but she has a very inspiring way of doing it. So he's giving it the stamp of approval.
Well, if anyone's going to know, he's going to know.
Yeah. Well, I always think the proof of the pudding is in the eating and not necessarily in talking about it or having somebody else rave about it. Have someone to try it and see how it works in their life, and then come back and tell me, well, maybe I need a little help in this area. It's not going like I thought it should. You see, once somebody knows what they want, the second step is to have a commitment about doing it. That's one of the ways we always fall short, is that we don't really stick to it. And so in the second step, I tell people, look at the obstacles. What's standing in your way? If this is your chief desire, why haven't you got it? What's wrong? Why isn't it already in being? And when you look and start writing down the obstacles that are in the path, oh, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time, I just can't do it, I don't have enough education. And then you say, okay, let's look at how you can get around some of those barriers, those things that you see as barriers right now. Mm-hmm. How can we get around that and really get where we want to go? So then they sort of think a little more positively, well, maybe somebody could babysit with the kids, maybe I could get a loan from so-and-so, and they begin to think, they turn that obstacle around and look at what may be possible, which is the key to the whole thing, to begin to see possibilities. Yes, I don't have to stay in this rut. I can get out and move about because there are resources we never thought about, maybe resources in other people, as well as money, bank loans, or whatever that we need to move ahead. And so then the next step after they've made that commitment, but unless you've made that commitment, you're not really going to anywhere. You're not going to get what you want, because you'll be wishy-washy. And what you have is a wish and not a dream, and certainly not a plan.
So they're actually steps 1 and 2. It's know what you want, and the second one is, commit to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's right. You see, I talk in terms of a vision. We're establishing here a personal vision. What's possible for you in this particular period of time in all facets of your life? So within the vision, later on comes goal setting, and we'll talk about intermediate and near-term goals. But initially what we're talking about is, how do you see yourself? See it, feel it, think it, smell it, do it, and then it will come into being. The third step then is to have somebody else go along with you. If you're going to start out on this journey and you're going to make some commitment about spending time to it, if you've got a spouse or a significant other, or maybe you're just a single parent responsible for children, you need to share that dream with them so they'll at least know what you're doing and won't become resentful. In the book, I have a lot of guidance about how to share your dream and when to share it and with whom to share it. Because we all know people, maybe you don't, Carl, but I do. We know people who just don't believe you can do anything more than you've done in the past, and they would advise you not to even bother. They would just say, well, that's all fancy nonsense, but, you just go ahead and do what you're doing. And they rob you of your dream if you let them.
They do, and that's something that's happened to me previously, where I've got a great idea for something, I'll really work on it, I'll put some energy into it, and then I'll tell somebody, and it'll be all laughs. It's not something that they believe will actually happen. So personally, what I've tended to do is often just do it, get it done, and then say, hey, look what I did. And then people, hey, sure, wow, I didn't know you could do that, but that's great. So that might not be the best way to do it.
Well, that is a good way to do it, because you do need to step out, and if you're committed, you have already in step 2 made the commitment. And so those people who try to rob you of your dream, you just have something kind to say to them, but you go on and do what you believe you can do. But I believe most of us know someone who's always on our side, always in our corner, and would encourage us. And that's the kind of person we need to seek out first to share our dreams with, because then, at first we're a little unsteady, especially if it's something that sounds a little outrageous, and it's just a bold venture that we're going to be on, which I encourage. I don't encourage anybody to look at reasonable goals. I think that's hogwash. Go for it.
Yeah, good on you, Jay.
Anyway, you find somebody to go along with you, and I have some clues in there how to communicate your vision. And I tell a little story about when I was a district governor and I had the dream about going to be number 1, and I was in front of a group of leaders at what we called a leadership breakfast. And I was just, very animated giving my speech, and I heard the guy who was serving as the treasurer say under his breath, "I think you're nuts."
I think you might be right.
I swallowed real hard, and my mind just started whirring. My mouth kept going because I knew what I was going to say, but my mind was all in a turmoil. What am I going to say next? I'm sure if I heard it, everybody else did. And so the golden nugget that came out of that was, you don't need everybody to believe in it. You start off moving ahead yourself and taking along those who already believe. Later on, other people will come and jump on the bandwagon, which is really what happened. You get it into motion, you move it past inertia.
Yeah.
And then other people will come along and say, oh, yeah, that was a great idea. Harry told me later, he said, you didn't hear what I said. After that, he's right, I didn't. That was enough for me. I didn't wait to hear anything else. Yeah. But he said that his last comment was, but I believe you can do it. And so, anyway, we're still friends, and I did put that in the book with his permission. In the book, too, I have a segment on how to form a mastermind group, although that's not one of the 6 steps. And I can go back afterwards and cover that, because I firmly believe in a mastermind group and the value in forming and belonging to mastermind groups.
Well, I've got that on my little question list here for a little later on, so I'm going to be quizzing you about that for sure. And, how they're different to, say, a sewing circle or a team at work. It's a very different structure, I know.
Oh, yeah.
I'll ask you a couple more questions on that a little later. So I'm scribbling down here. I've got number 1, know what you want. Number 2, commit to it. And number 3, share your dreams.
That's right. And then the next step is to form a plan. You need to see, okay, you've looked at exactly what you want. It's the big thing out there. So then the next step is to break it down in smaller pieces and see what needs to happen in order to achieve the dream, in order to reach that point in your life where you want to. Say you want to have a tremendous responsibility in a corporation, and you're just beginning. Well, what's it going to take to get there? Well, maybe you need to get a college degree in a particular area. Maybe you need a lot of other things along the way. But as you think about it, and you think of all of those little things, write everything down that you can think of that'll need to happen, surely you'll discover other things later on, because we don't know everything at step 1 at the beginning of this venture, so we'll have to fill in other things later on. But we'll need to make a list of everything that needs to happen, and if something needs to happen before another, if one depends on another, we need to make note of that as well, so that in the end, what we have is a long to-do list, and then we have to wrap that to-do list into a sensible milestone chart so we can see what needs to be done first, what needs to be done when, and we need to figure out how long this is going to take us. And so we need to start forming some near-term goals and intermediate goals so that we can plot our course over time as we're working toward our objective. Now, some people really are firm goal setters, and this is where your goals come in, because when you leave this step in my seminars, you should be ready to take a first step that very day or no later than the next day. You need to move out and take a step on this journey that's going to lead you to your dream. If you delay, you may just procrastinate and lose sight of it. But if you get into action right away, you've made a plan now, and then you've got to implement it. You've got to take that first step. And even when things don't go the way you think they should, you need to keep on and keep that vision in mind. Now, I learned a long time ago how to make a goal poster. And this was before I knew how to use a computer. And so the guidance was to cut pictures out of magazines. If you don't have clip art, you can't just put it on a computer, but put some pictures that represent some of the things that you want in life as sort of a reminder, so that when you're tempted to give up, you'll look at this and you'll say, well, I'm not doing so bad. I may not be on target with the timeline that I had envisioned, but I can certainly see that I can achieve this. I may have to put the time, to extend the time a bit, but I can certainly do it. The whole thing is to keep yourself in the mind that it is possible, because anything is possible, really. I'm sure that you've done things, Carl, that at first seemed a little impossible, and most of the people who listen to this have too.
Absolutely. And it's strange because I actually do that anyway. I do the goal setting. I'm quite a strong goal setter. But I actually do the mapping too. So, I'm a bit of a computer guy, so I use Microsoft Publisher. I put my face in the middle of the page and I draw out little lines and I explain key facets of my life. And I do it privately, but I will hedge off to one corner of the screen and put a picture of a house that I'd really rather like to own, or perhaps a holiday home that I'd really like to be associated with, perhaps pictures of my family, and I'll put a note about maybe their health or their well-being or their happiness. And it's something I do a lot of, and you're right, it does help.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's all sorts of ways of doing it, and most of us do want to keep it private, because we know, it really doesn't concern anybody else. It's what we do that matters, and then their reaction to us is what they decide to do. But keeping it private, even if you do it in hard copy, if you don't work on a computer, you could put it in a drawer someplace or under your mattress. It's just for you.
Or in a book nobody reads. That's my take.
There's a good idea. Yeah, then just pull it out and look at it from time to time so you know. Yeah, and the next step is to measure your progress. So you've got tick points along the way as to the time going by, and you have a certain progress that you want to make over time. And so I encourage people to draw a line as to their desire. What is it that they're planning to do? And then to go back and measure what actually occurs. Now, maybe you have a computer program that you do that on, and certainly there are programs out there for plotting projects that you could use to do your own life, or you can just do it in a journal. You could do it on a piece of paper at the back of an envelope. But I really believe it's necessary to see so you can pat yourself on the back and say, hey, I really have made some progress. Maybe it didn't come up to what I planned. Maybe it fell short this time. And then you think about how can you increase the activity, maybe hire some help, or do whatever it takes to catch up to where you thought you would be at this time. Or you may just make a decision that it's okay that it didn't come out that way this time, and you'll just extend the timeline out a little bit. Instead of getting that house in 2006, it's okay if you get it within the first 6 months of 2007. And so you just allow that extended period of time to do these activities that didn't get done as you had anticipated. Does that make sense?
So is that point 4 then, breaking it down into manageable chunks?
Breaking it down into manageable chunks is planning and implementing. That's when you're developing your plan and your strategy. And then the next step is to measure your progress over time. I call it keeping score. Does that make sense? Does that follow your outline?
I'm scribbling. Oh, my poor buyer is going like the clappers here. Okay, well then, of course, that just leaves point 6.
Right, and that's where you reward yourself. Now, this goes on over time, but it was hard to sprinkle it throughout the chapters, so I just called it a separate section.
I like the sound of this section.
The reward yourself?
Yeah.
Rewards, yeah. Because that's important. And, you can tie rewards to goals as you go along. Oh, when I get this particular point, I'm going to buy myself that diamond ring. Or when I reach this weight, I'm going to go to a movie or go to New York to see a play or whatever. But it helps if we have something to look forward to as a sign of our achievement. Sometimes we're pretty good at doing that for other people. I know when I worked in the Pentagon, it was hard to figure out what you reward a military officer with, what makes them happy, or as, a mid to senior level civilian, what turns them on.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to figure out what it is that person wants, what would be an appropriate reward for somebody. We don't really do a good job, I don't think, overall in rewarding people, because sometimes we give rewards to basically salve our conscience if we've done something that we feel like we need to right. Then we go to extremes to reward someone, and then sometimes a reward looks like it's all to promote the giver and not the receiver.
Yes.
So we need to have some finesse when we decide to present awards to someone, and know what to praise, know when to praise it, know how to praise it, and think of creative ways to do that. one of the things I put in the book, and many people don't know that a person can purchase a flag that has flown over the Capitol building of the United States of America.
Oh.
Now I realize in other parts of the world that probably wouldn't turn you on because it's an American flag.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., it gets quite a bit of attention.
Oh, sure.
People generally didn't know you could do that.
Wow, not at all.
And rewarding yourself, whether it's time out, whether it's a vacation, whatever it is, that's extremely important to keep you going, to keep you on track, to see that transpires.
What would you say to somebody listening to this that might be saying, yeah, sure, I understand the steps, they make sense, but isn't it really just putting off happiness until tomorrow?
Well, I would say if you're not happy in the course of doing this, then go back and look at your dream, because it's probably not something that will be satisfying for you in the end. Because in my view, when you're working full bore to achieve what you want in life, you become very happy and excited, and the adrenaline flows because you can see the progress you're making. I would hate to think that it comes down to being a chore, because that would say to me, perhaps this has been the wrong dream that was chosen.
Mm. I think it reminds me of, I think it's a quote by Socrates, who says something like, I'm a little rusty with my quotes, but something like, he who is not happy with what he has will not be happy with what he gets.
Yeah, the whole, well, you could say that and then stay satisfied and stay where you are.
Well, true. But you've got to be happy in the journey rather than just waiting for happiness at the destination.
Exactly. I had a multimillionaire tell me one time he was never so happy with his millions as he was in achieving, in earning the money, because there he was interacting with people. He was excited, he was winning, he was losing, he was, it was a challenge. But once he got the money, and of course he was in his 90s at that time, and so he was not active in the marketplace.
Yeah.
But he had the money, but it was like, oh, I can remember when, and
Yeah.
that was the sweet part, was the journey.
Yeah.
And I think anybody that's ever run for a gold medal, ever tried to achieve something just that seemed out of reach will agree that most of it is in the journey. Standing there with a gold medal in your hand, yeah, that's a dream, but look at all of that time that you spent getting there. Mm. Look at Lance Armstrong. I mean, as much as he's practiced and having run the Tour de France so many times, it has to be part of it, part of that adrenaline, part of that real feeling of accomplishment is in the journey.
It's good, solid advice. Part of those steps I've heard before, but they're timeless. So I imagine some people listening to this, they're thinking, okay, step 1, know what you want. Step 2, commit to it. Step 3, share your dream. Step 4, work on your planning and your strategy. Step 5, keep a score, monitor your progress, and of course, my favorite, step 6, reward yourself. What would you say to people listening to this that might be thinking, okay, I know the steps now, why should I buy a book?
Well, I would say if you can follow through and you believe you know it all, go to it. You don't need to buy the book. The book is downloadable, by the way, and it has places to write in the book itself. But certainly, if a person has been exposed to these ideas before, I would say go for it.
Yeah.
But what generally happens is we don't have the discipline to do it, and that's why I do weekend seminars on this. People come and they sit down and we work through helping them to, the very hardest thing is the first step, is to know what you want. It is so hard to figure out what a core desire is in various facets of our lives. It takes time, and we don't usually give it the time.
I think one of the things as well is you need inspiring to take that time, and that's the sort of thing where, if you're reading the book, then I'm sure you'll get the stories, the tales of others and how they've come through, like yourself, for example.
And if you can do it with a significant other or a spouse, that is really tremendous, because there you're beginning to work as a mastermind. And there is a lot of serendipity in working together with someone else who's on the same wavelength as you are, who's going for the same goals, dreams, and visions that you are. That's really sweet.
Oh, yes. Well, Jo, I'm going to stop you there because we're going to take a quick break right now and play a little light music. Now, you're listening to selfdevradio.com, and we're speaking live with Jo Condrill. She's the author of the book and audio series Take Charge of Your Life. She's kind of the female version of Anthony Robbins, really. She's the woman behind goalminds.com. And after the break, she'll be telling us exactly what a mastermind group is and why we will desperately need one. That's all after Be My Girl by Steve Hansen. You're listening to Self-Dev Radio, and we're chatting live here with Jo Condrill. She's the author of Take Charge of Your Life, and we're starting to talk with Jo about mastermind groups. Now, Jo, you told us how to take charge of a life just before the break there, and you finished by talking about mastermind groups and how they can really help you kind of turbocharge your goals. What are mastermind groups?
A mastermind group is a group of people who get together on a regular basis to talk about what's going on in their lives, what their challenges are, and to help each other to face those challenges and to think about solutions and resolutions to the things that they're wrestling with. Now, in a mastermind group, the people need to be of one mind. They need to be working in harmony. That's one of the keys. And the mastermind principle was divulged by Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich. But the person who had used it and that Napoleon talked about was Andrew Carnegie, who was the steel maker in the United States at the turn of the 20th century.
Yes.
And amassed a great fortune, but he said he didn't know how to make steel. He knew people who knew how. And he explained how he used the minds, tapping into the minds of other people with great results. And I belong to several mastermind groups. In fact, one of the people who was in one of my mastermind groups was my co-author for my first book. And that book is very, very successful. I had another mastermind group before I became district governor, and started the journey to lead 3,000 Toastmasters to rank number one in the world. And so I highly respect the possibilities of a mastermind group and encourage people to see if they can't find like-minded people who would be willing to meet on a regular basis, whether that's weekly. Some of the ones I belong to met weekly. Some met once a month, but I think you get more value out of it if you meet weekly or biweekly. And when you come to a place that everyone gathers, and I really suggest that the mastermind group be not more than 7 people. It becomes too unwieldy because during the course of your gathering, you want to have an opportunity individually to present something that's a challenge to you at that particular point in time. And the other people in the group offer comments that might be helpful, that are hoped to be helpful to you. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it's particularly helpful at that point in time. This often occurred to me, and maybe it's just because I'm a slow thinker, but after I'd leave the group, I would have like an aha experience.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, here's how I can use that thought that someone else had presented, or maybe they had even presented it for somebody else in the group's problem, and I saw that I could use it to resolve my own issues or to move my own project forward. I really believe everybody in the group needs to have a positive mental attitude and an expectation of success. Sometimes not everybody clicks. Sometimes not everybody is on the same wavelength, and you have a person who is has a different goal, is going in a different direction. And that's when that person would be better off to leave and form a different mastermind group so that they could work on something different. Some masterminds do focus on one particular objective, as the mastermind group did before I became a district governor, but most often they are going after their own objectives. They're going after their own projects. I did have an occasion to speak to one sales manager who was working with a mastermind group for his salespeople. And there again, they were all focused on one objective, sales, and it was real estate. And so they could all contribute ideas and share ideas and what worked, what didn't work, and present suggestions to everyone. In one mastermind group that I belonged to, one of the women brought in the name of a radio talk show host and said, okay, if anybody could use this, here's the name. And I still am interviewed, and this is several years later, I'm still interviewed periodically by that same radio host.
Wow.
And he's a small business person. Yeah. I mean, his show is a small business advocate, and he's put me in his brain thrust. So
yes,
I think that was definitely a golden nugget that she brought to that meeting.
So it's definitely more of almost a support group rather than, say, a sewing circle or the team at work.
Right. It's definitely more because you're focused on something that is extremely meaningful to you and a challenge to you at the time. And other people contribute. That's one of the keys, is that everybody gets something out of the meeting and has something to give. And so you can't just come and rake in the ideas for yourself. You have to be willing to do a little creative thinking for everybody else as well. But that synergy is there, and it nearly always happens to the benefit of the people there. But harmony, if you're a competitor, you don't want to be in the same mastermind group with one of your competitors because people clam up and they become unwilling to share.
Yeah.
You want to have someone who's willing to open up and give you their best thoughts.
So they don't necessarily have to be in the same industry even, as long as they've got a similar goal.
That's true. It's best if there's diversity in the group, because a diversity of personalities as well as diversity of interests and knowledges and abilities, because that's where you contribute, where your contribution is really valuable.
How do you set one up, Jo? I mean, could you do it even online?
I don't think you could do it online because there's so much. And, I know some people are dedicated to chat rooms and that kind of thing, and it may work in a chat room. I have not tried it. I have heard of it being done on the telephone. One of the executive development offices in the government was using it, not knowing what they were doing, but they were using the principles in conference calls and setting up mastermind groups so that people could talk about what's working in their areas and how, others could suggest it would be improved. And the thing is to contact 2 or 3 people that you think would be interested, would be willing to make the commitment, and that you would be in sync with, would be in harmony with you and your objectives. Like I say, you don't want a competitor. You want somebody that would be willing to give you ideas, to share ideas, I know this is a stale saying, to get out of the box, to do some outrageous, outlandish thinking, who would be willing to challenge you beyond what you do day to day, to think about things that you might reach for. Mm-hmm. We, I think, are kind of lazy because we just kind of are comfortable and we like what we're doing, and we don't like to stretch and reach and challenge ourselves to get the most out of life. And there's so much more out there that we could be doing and enjoying, and life is a trip. And it's what you make it, and so I believe, like the old beer commercial, go for the gusto.
It's true. And also approach it, I'm guessing, with a bit of an open mind, because when I initially visualize this, in my mind, I have a group of people sitting around a table, nervously shuffling, perhaps trying to contribute what they think to be good ideas, and I would perhaps initially feel a little bit cautious, a little bit nervous. I'm guessing if I were to approach a group like that, I should go with an open mind, even if I was to set the group up myself. Hope for good things. Don't necessarily put a black mark over it before you start.
Mm-hmm. I would say that developing a trust is your most important objective in the first 3 or 4 meetings, because people will be hesitant to open up fully until they know they can trust you. And when the group gels and really settles in as people who trust each other, then you'll see more open discussion, more free sharing of information with each other. And that's when you really get the best of the group. In the group setting, whether it's at home, in someone's home, or in an office, or in a restaurant, the idea is that each individual has an opportunity to present what is challenging for them. And when they do that, then everyone else has a turn going around the table to contribute some comments or some helpful suggestions to the individual who presented the challenge.
So how do you actually set one of these up, Jo?
Well, you pick up the phone and call someone, or you talk to the person who you go to lunch with and say, I heard this idea, and I'm beginning to, and I want to form what's called a mastermind group. You can call it something else if you want to. You can call it a brain power group, but a mastermind group is most common. And here's the idea. We'll sit around and talk, and we'll each have an opportunity and just basically explain the process, and then get a commitment from 2 or 3 people to come together on a particular day. And then from that point, you can determine whether you want to invite other people to join. It's better if they join in early in the forming of the group so that it's not someone coming in later on. It's more difficult to to keep that sense of trust and openness when you bring new people in. And it's important for the same people to be present every week, even if there's nothing challenging. Their presence should be there to help someone else. So in the first meeting, you set up some ground rules, like this is all in confidentiality. We don't go out and talk about what's happening here. And another good ground rule would be that everybody meets every week when they come together, and that people be thinking about things they can contribute to the group in the meantime. And then when they are together, to share openly and frankly with each other. The idea is to be encouraging, to be in harmony, to have positive expectations of the outcome of the group, and to keep a positive attitude. And the other thing is, when you go away, to take the actions that you say you will, so that when you leave, you can be trusted to honor your commitments or live up to what you said you would do. Mm. So coming together in a particular place on a regular basis is tremendously important. Find those people, invite them to come, say, let's give it a try. What have we got to lose? And as long as you can trust each other or develop the trust, you may not trust each other that much at first, but as long as you can work in a sense of harmony and develop the trust, great things can happen.
Do you think that setting up a mastermind group is really key to achieving your goals through those 6 principles, the 6 steps of taking charge of your life that we mentioned before the break?
Well, I think it's a good thing to do. I don't think it's essential. Mm. You can work magic without a mastermind group, but you can, especially in a business sense, you can improve a great deal in a shorter period of time when you're operating with a mastermind group, because you have other expertise that will be shared with you generously in an open environment. Now, some people come looking for partners, looking for people to really join and work with them. That's not the intent of the mastermind group. Mm. It's strictly brain power. If those things occur, it should be on the side, but not during the meeting.
So I guess you could even set this sort of mastermind group up inside a company. So if you run a company, yes, you employ a number of people. It's not like a team meeting because it doesn't really have that sort of agenda to it, but it's focusing on the success of the business.
That's so true, and I even see that for government. In fact, I wrote a rather large article for that for our Homeland Security people quite some time ago, because I felt like it was the sharing of information that was really missing in so many key areas. And when you can share that information in an open environment without fear of retaliation or something, your company is so much further ahead. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a good thing for a business to focus on one goal, but to have this mastermind operating in harmony and openness without fear of retribution.
So, Jo, I just want to ask one last question. Can you tell me what mastermind groups you're a part of?
Well, at the moment, I don't have one. I'm looking for one.
What?
Because I moved. I had one in California, and I just moved to Texas a year ago, and some family issues with my mother, and so I must confess that's one of the things that was on the back burner for a while until I got my feet on the ground after relocating from Los Angeles to San Antonio.
Yeah.
And I did have one when I was on the West Coast, and in that group, many of us were focused on writing and developing a book and publishing in that industry. And there was one couple in that group who ended up doing business together because she was a marketing expert, and he had a consulting business and was trying to write a book, and so she ended up working for him. But that's not the usual thing. You don't usually go there to find a job or something.
It's not a networking group.
It's a serendipity of the mastermind group. That's right. That's right. And I definitely feel, a part of it, a part of my entrepreneurial spirit is missing without participating in a mastermind group, because I know how valuable they have been to me in the past. Mm-hmm.
So if there's anyone listening in Texas,
call me.
Yeah, get in touch.
That's right. Go to my website, goalminds.com, GOALMINDS. People sometimes think it's gold mine.
Yes, goldmine.com. Take you to a totally different website, I think. So, well, I'll give you that address again in just a moment. Jo, you've been a real inspiration. Mastermind groups, reinventing and taking charge of your life, and of course those 6 steps. Know what you want, commit to it, share your dreams, get on with planning and strategizing, keep score and reward yourself. There's some real gems there. So, Jo, I want to thank you very much for your time. It's been really great having you on the station.
It's been my pleasure, Carl, and good luck to you with your mastermind groups.
Thank you. Good luck to you finding one.
Thank you.
Now, if you've enjoyed this interview, you can also check out our interview with Jo on our sister station. It's at writersfm.com. She's been interviewed there, and that was a fantastic interview, and this was as well. If you want to learn more about Jo, her teachings, or to grab a copy of her many self-development books and CD courses, then be sure to check out that official website Jo just mentioned. It's online at www.goalminds.com. That's GOALMINDS.com. This is Carl. You're listening to selfdevradio.com. Big thanks to Jo Condrill, and we'll be right back after this.